A swirl of rain battered the windows of Massachusetts General Hospital, mirroring the turmoil churning inside Cecilia Whitmore's heart. 7 months pregnant and alone, she staggered through the doors, gripping her swollen belly as staff rushed to her aid. Where was Bradford, her millionaire husband, who had promised to be her rock? That very same night, miles away in a private clinic, Bradford was seen with a mysterious woman's eyes locked and voices hushed in an unmistakable tension. Whispers of betrayal now echoed between sterile walls and shattered vows. What dark secrets could tear a once devoted husband from the mother of his unborn child? Cecilia Whitmore was born and raised in a quiet suburb outside Cleveland, Ohio. Her father ran a modest plumbing business. Her mother taught piano lessons from their living room. From an early age, she dreamt of bigger horizons, art museums, exotic travel, a life unconfined by small-town expectations. Her gentle spirit and empathetic nature stood out among her peers. Rather than partying on weekends, she volunteered at local shelters, tutoring underprivileged kids. Bradford Whitmore, on the other hand, hailed from old money. His family owned a string of luxury resorts across the globe. He was the kind of man who turned heads everywhere. He went charismatic, impeccably dressed, and with a smile that made deals happen. Though he had enough wealth to last several lifetimes, he was hungry for more. By his mid-20s, he had parlayed a hefty trust fund into successful technology startups. Business magazines described him as the unstoppable rising star. Their worlds collided at a charity gala in Manhattan. Cecilia, invited as a volunteer to oversee the silent auction, arrived in a borrowed gown. Bradford, the event's star donor, made a flamboyant entrance amid cameras flashing and reporters barking questions. Their first meeting happened serendipitously by a chocolate fountain. She spilled a small dollop on her borrowed dress, and he rushed to help clean it, apologizing as if it were his own fault. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Brad's grey eyes met Cecilia's warm brown gaze, and an invisible spark ignited. He found her refreshing, no pretenses, no hunger for fame. She found him unexpectedly kind, not at all the arrogant mogul she'd imagined from tabloids. Over the months that followed, their whirlwind romance became the talk of the city's social circles. Even tabloids speculated, who is this mysterious, wholesome beauty taming the heart of the multi-millionaire Bradford Whitmore? They dined in world-class restaurants, traveled to art capitals, and spent quiet weekends at his family's countryside estate. For Cecilia, it felt like a fairy tale come true. For Bradford, it was the first time he wanted to slow down, to savor something beyond business success. Soon enough, wedding bells chimed. The ceremony took place in the lush gardens of the Whitmore estate in upstate New York. Vows were exchanged amid champagne toasts and a sky ablaze with fireworks. Cecilia was radiant in a simple, elegant gown that defied the typical, showy extravagance of high society. Bradford couldn't tear his eyes from her face as they danced beneath the stars. But, as with many fairy tales, reality would eventually knock at their door. Bradford's ambition was relentless. Late-night strategy meetings, impromptu business trips, and the constant hum of deals pulling him away from home. Cecilia tried to adapt, supporting his pursuits while nurturing her own small passion, an online art store where she sold watercolor prints. Though overshadowed by Bradford's empire, she found solace in painting. Still, they seemed happy enough until a spark of new life arrived, propelling them into uncharted territory. When Cecilia discovered she was pregnant, it was a chilly winter evening. She had felt uncommonly tired, her senses heightened. After a subtle hunch led her to a nearby pharmacy, she returned home, heart pounding, as she held the test in her hands. The little plus sign confirmed her suspicions. She imagined Bradford sweeping her into his arms, tears of joy in his eyes. They'd plan the nursery together, pick out names, and watch comedic parenting videos online to calm their nerves. But that night, Bradford was out at a business dinner. She waited until nearly midnight, pacing the marble floors of their penthouse. When he finally slipped through the door, reeking of cologne and wine, exhaustion etched into his features, Cecilia gently led him to the sofa and presented the test. A momentary flicker of joy lit his eyes. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "We're having a baby." For the next few weeks, everything seemed blissful. Bradford bragged to business partners about becoming a father, looked up lavish baby gear, and assured Cecilia that they could hire the best nannies money could buy. They even scheduled an appointment at Massachusetts General Hospital, where a top obstetrician-gynecologist specialized in high-profile cases. From house staff to wealthy socialites, everyone congratulated them. Cecilia was determined to keep a sense of normalcy, though. She refused the idea of an army of nannies or an over-the-top baby shower. She promised herself she would remain hands-on, teaching her child humility amidst wealth. Secretly, she also hoped that becoming parents would slow Bradford's breakneck pace and bring them closer. But within a month, Bradford's schedule ramped up again: early morning conferences in Tokyo by video call, transatlantic flights to woo investors, and endless evening events. Cecilia tried not to complain. After all, his drive to expand his real estate and tech holdings was part of what had always set him apart. She convinced herself that once the baby arrived, he'd be more present. The first cracks in their relationship showed up around her 3rd month of pregnancy. A routine ultrasound was scheduled, and Bradford promised he'd attend. She sat in the waiting room alone for nearly an hour before a nurse gently guided her for the scan. Bradford arrived huffing and apologetic just as it was finishing. His phone buzzed incessantly. Even during the brief moment he placed a hand on her abdomen to feel a faint flutter. Cecilia assured him it was fine, that it was just one appointment. But deep down, she felt an invisible distance growing, one that overshadowed the joyous pulse of new life within her. As the 2nd trimester progressed, Cecilia found herself alone more often. Their penthouse, once a place of laughter, became eerily quiet. Sometimes she'd pass a gilded mirror in the hallway and barely recognize the anxious woman gazing back at her, a slight protrusion in her belly, a trembling determination in her eyes. Bradford's arrivals home were increasingly erratic. He stopped mentioning new business deals, which was unlike him. She suspected hidden stresses, lawsuits, property disputes, or maybe a rough patch in negotiations. Still, he wore his trademark polished mask, never admitting weakness. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but a creeping intuition told Cecilia something was amiss. Rumors started circulating among their acquaintances. At a charity brunch, one socialite casually remarked to Cecilia, "I saw Bradford in Midtown the other day, having lunch with a gorgeous brunette. New client, perhaps?" The woman's smirk suggested otherwise. Cecilia waved it off with a polite laugh, but her heart thundered with worry. At home, she tried to bring it up gently. "Someone mentioned they saw you with a woman. A client? Everything okay?" Bradford brushed it aside with a dismissive wave. "I meet with dozens of people daily. You know that. Relax, Cece." He placed a quick kiss on her forehead before disappearing into his study, but rumors grew. Another friend texted her a picture blurry, and from a distance of Bradford sitting in a cafe, leaning intimately toward a woman who was decidedly not a business partner type. The woman's hand rested on his arm, their faces close as though sharing a secret. That night, Cecilia confronted him more directly. He dodged the accusation with a flurry of annoyance. "It's just business. She's an investor's daughter. Stop being paranoid." Yet his phone never left his side, and he grew protective of it. Late at night, While Cecilia tried to sleep, she heard him whispering into the phone in the adjacent study. Her chest tightened. She told herself not to jump to conclusions. She was pregnant, hormonal, and possibly reading too much into small gestures. Perhaps Bradford was simply finalizing a crucial deal. Her father had once warned her that when shadows appear in a relationship, it's best to confront them head-on rather than let them grow. Cecilia recognized the shadows coiling around her marriage. The question was whether Bradford would speak the truth, or if there was something far more sinister lurking in the background. One damp afternoon, Cecilia decided to schedule an extra prenatal checkup. She'd felt unusually fatigued, occasionally dizzy. Bradford was busy with a business lunch, so she phoned her personal driver, Winston, to take her to Massachusetts General Hospital. The city was cloaked in drizzle, raindrops pelting the car windows as they traversed busy streets. Once in the OB-GYN department, she underwent blood tests and a quick ultrasound. Dr. Grant, the obstetrician, noted that while everything seemed fine, stress could become a serious factor if not managed. He recommended frequent rest, possibly therapy, and stronger emotional support from family. As Cecilia left, she paused near a corridor leading to private consultation rooms for wealthy or high-profile patients. She glimpsed a familiar shape down the hallway, Bradford. Her eyes widened. Her heart soared for a moment. Maybe he'd realized she was coming in today and wanted to surprise her. Yet, something about his stance made her uneasy. He was speaking to a tall, dark-haired woman wearing a white coat. A doctor, perhaps. They stood close, whispering. The woman placed a reassuring hand on his arm. Cecilia stepped forward, intending to call out, but Bradford abruptly pressed a finger to his lips, signaling the woman to hush. They darted into a nearby consultation room. Cecilia's mind swirled with confusion. Why would Bradford be at the hospital, let alone in a secretive hallway conversation? Trying not to panic, she crept closer, hearing muffled voices. The words discretion and diagnosis seeped through the closed door. She lingered, uncertain whether to barge in or wait. Just then, her phone buzzed a text from Bradford, busy with work, home late. The hypocrisy jolted her. He was here, in the same hospital, lying about his whereabouts. Trembling, she stepped back. Unsure of what she'd stumbled upon, she left. It might have been a private specialist he was consulting for stress or a routine check of his own. But her gut told her this secret meeting harbored more than mere health concerns. Cecilia returned home feeling disoriented, longing to unburden her suspicions to someone. Her parents were too far away, and while she considered confiding in her mother-in-law, the older woman was famously tight-lipped and wholly devoted to her son's reputation. Instead, she confided in her old friend, Ariana, who had watched her evolution from small-town dreamer to socialite's wife with a mixture of pride and caution. They met at a cozy cafe away from the glamorous spots, favored by Bradford's circle. Over steaming cups of chamomile tea, Ariana listened intently as Cecilia described the hallway encounter, the puzzling secrecy, the hush-hush conversation that ended abruptly. "You're sure it was him?" Ariana asked gently, though her raised eyebrows showed she knew the answer. Cecilia nodded, detailing his stance, his voice, and the text message he sent her that same moment. Ariana frowned. "Something's off, Cece. You need to find out what's going on." For the next few days, Cecilia tried to watch Bradford's behavior without accusation. He remained cagey, clutching his phone like a lifeline, stepping outside to take calls. He labeled urgent business matters. At night, they spoke little. He seemed drained and retreated to bed earlier than usual. One weekend morning, as he showered, Cecilia summoned the courage to glance at his phone, which lay on the nightstand. The screen was locked, but notifications revealed missed calls from an unknown number. A text popped up in preview. "When can we meet at the clinic?" Her heart pounded. The swirl of dread in her chest threatened to suffocate her. Clinic. That word triggered flashbacks of seeing him at the hospital. She quickly dropped the phone when she heard the water shut off, scuttling back to her seat as if nothing happened. Bradford emerged, hair dripping, and gave her a quick peck on the cheek before dressing. She felt the kiss like a ghostly imprint, offering her no comfort. Any illusions of trust continued to unravel. Cecilia was haunted by the feeling that her life was drifting from a Cinderella fantasy into something dark and foreboding. 3 days later, an unexpected phone call rattled the fragile threads of Cecilia's composure. An unfamiliar female voice introduced herself as Dr. Evelyn Harper, the woman who specialized in executive health concerns at a discreet private clinic downtown. "I'm calling regarding your husband, Bradford," Dr. Harper said, sounding uneasy. "He's scheduled for a consultation this week, and I noticed you're also a patient at Massachusetts General. I wanted to coordinate. Sometimes couples prefer a joint approach to stress management." Confusion set in. Cecilia had never heard of this Dr. Harper, nor had Bradford mentioned any stress management program. She hesitated, then asked, "Is this about his personal health?" The doctor paused. "You should really speak with your husband. It's, complicated. If you'd like to schedule a visit together, I'd be happy to accommodate." That night, Cecilia confronted Bradford. The conversation flared into anger within minutes. "Why is your doctor calling me?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "What's happening at this clinic you're so secretive about?" Bradford's face hardened. He spat out a half-truth about minor health concerns, claiming he just wanted privacy away from the press. Cecilia didn't believe him, but she let it pass for the moment. She was heavily pregnant, and stress forced her to clutch her abdomen, feeling her baby kick in alarm. "We'll discuss this later," he barked, turning away. For the first time in their marriage, Cecilia couldn't read her husband's eyes. They seemed clouded with guilt, resentment, maybe even fear. She spent the night hugging her belly, promising her unborn child that no matter what secrets or lies were swirling around, she'd protect them both. Bradford's erratic behavior escalated. Late-night phone calls, mysterious text messages, and a creeping distance that made Cecilia feel like a stranger in her own home. She tried focusing on her baby's health, but the swirling maelstrom of suspicion eroded her peace. Her visits to the doctor revealed no serious complications. Yet Dr. Grant gently insisted she reduce stress. "Your blood pressure is spiking," he cautioned. "We need to keep an eye on that." Cecilia considered confronting Dr. Harper face to face but hesitated. She feared what she might learn. Instead, she visited Ariana again, confiding her suspicion that Bradford was hiding a mistress, someone he might have impregnated or someone he was supporting. Ariana urged her to consider all possibilities. "If there is another woman, the truth will surface," she said, "but ignoring it is worse." Night after night, Cecilia found herself lying awake, counting the minutes until Bradford returned from business meetings. Their bed felt cold, a testament to the emotional gulf between them. On one particularly lonely night, she indulged in a heartbreaking memory, the time Bradford serenaded her during a trip to Paris. They had danced by the Seine under the moonlight, believing their love could conquer anything. How had they fallen so far? Then came the small but potent confirmations that fed her suspicions. A lipstick stain on a collar that wasn't hers. A whiff of perfume, not her brand, on his suit jacket. Veiled references from Bradford's associates, who seemed to look at her with pity during functions. "How are you holding up?" they'd ask, avoiding eye contact. One evening, while flipping through the channels, she caught a glimpse of a gossip show. The host discussed rumors about a billionaire rumored to be stepping out on his pregnant wife. The silhouette used in the segment looked remarkably like Bradford. Mortified, Cecilia switched off the TV. As the weeks crawled by, Cecilia's pregnancy neared its 7th month, and her belly swelled in preparation for the life she nurtured. Each fetal kick reminded her of an impending future for better or worse. She tried to remain strong, but tears often streaked her face in quiet moments. She prayed that, if nothing else, the baby would be healthy. Bradford became increasingly evasive. He vanished during weekends, claiming urgent deals in other cities. Sometimes he'd reappear only after midnight, smelling of alcohol and foreign perfume. She confronted him more than once, but each argument ended with him slamming a door or accusing her of paranoia. She clutched her abdomen protectively every time, fearful of the stress harming the baby. Amid this emotional chaos, Dr. Harper's name continued to surface. Bradford inadvertently left a billing statement on his desk for Harper Medical Spa, referencing various consultations. The amounts paid were exorbitant. This was more than just therapy sessions. One Sunday morning, while rummaging through a drawer for a missing earring, Cecilia found a small silver bracelet with an engraved name, Olivia. It certainly wasn't hers, nor was it likely for the baby she had settled on naming their child if it was a girl. But Olivia wasn't even on the list. Her heart pounded. Could that be the mistress's name? That afternoon she confronted Bradford directly. He exploded, swearing it was a gift for the daughter of a client. The vitriol in his eyes left her trembling. He stormed out of the penthouse, leaving her in tears. She sensed they were barreling toward a crisis. The day that would change everything arrived without fanfare. Cecilia woke early, a dull ache in her lower back. She'd experienced mild contractions throughout the night, assuming it was false labor. She tried to soothe herself with herbal tea and a warm bath, but something felt off. She dialed Bradford's number repeatedly, only to be sent to voicemail. Despite the tension between them, she was desperate for his support. By mid-morning, the pain intensified, spreading across her abdomen. She realized these weren't mere Braxton Hicks contractions. Something was truly wrong. Panicking, she called Ariana, who insisted she head to the hospital immediately. Just as she was about to leave, a sudden wave of dizziness overtook her. She stumbled, clutching a nearby chair. Her phone slipped from her hand, cracking on the marble floor. She had no time to retrieve it. Summoning the last of her strength, she reached the lobby, where the doorman rushed to help. An ambulance was called, and her world blurred into sirens, swirling lights, and frightened paramedics urging her to breathe deeply. During the ride, she clutched her belly, fear mounting. Each contraction felt like a massive wave crashing over her, relentless. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Please be okay, little one," she whispered, feeling her baby's uncertain flutters. The hospital's doors slid open, revealing the bustling interior where doctors and nurses scrambled to manage incoming patients. The paramedics wheeled Cecilia in on a gurney, and the fourth already inserted into her arm. She vaguely recognized some of the staff from her earlier visits, though now everything felt urgent and chaotic. Nurses guided her to an exam room, hooking her up to monitors that tracked her contractions and the baby's heart rate. Dr. Grant, her obstetrician, arrived within minutes, his expression serious. He examined her, then murmured to a nearby nurse about ordering tests. He squeezed Cecilia's hand. "We'll do everything we can," he reassured. Meanwhile, the world beyond those hospital walls was a blur of phone calls and unanswered questions. Ariana arrived breathless, having followed the ambulance by car. She clasped Cecilia's hand, providing a semblance of solace amid the storm. "I tried calling Bradford," she said, voice shaking, "but he's not picking up." Cecilia felt a torrent of emotions swirling: fear for her baby, heartbreak over her husband's absence, and an ominous sense of dread. She mustered the courage to ask Dr. Grant if the baby was in distress. He pursed his lips. "The heart rate's stable for now, but your contractions are a bit early. We need to manage your blood pressure." A flicker of worry cast a shadow over his features. With a shaky breath, Cecilia nodded. A nurse adjusted her, the fourth urging her to rest and conserve energy. But how could she rest, alone and frightened, on the precipice of a medical emergency? While Cecilia clung to Ariana's support, Bradford was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, across town in a discreet private clinic, Bradford stepped out of a room with Dr. Harper. Trailing behind him, wearing a designer coat and smug expression, was a stunning brunette, Olivia Blackwood. Olivia was a socialite known for flitting through the upper echelons of society. She clung to Bradford's arm as if she owned him. A nurse observed them from behind the counter, eyebrows raised. "Mr. Whitmore," she called out gently, "there's a call for you urgent." Bradford, lost in conversation with Olivia, ignored the nurse, but Dr. Harper insisted, "You should take this. It might be important." With a sigh, he picked up the phone at the reception desk, only to hear Ariana's frantic voice. "Bradford, where are you? Cecilia's been rushed to Massachusetts General. It's serious." A stunned silence fell. Olivia tensed, flipping her hair back as she waited for Bradford's reaction. He swallowed hard, guilt and fear flickering across his face. I can't deal with this right now," he muttered, glancing at Olivia. "We have an appointment." The nurse at the desk frowned in disbelief. Dr. Harper also looked appalled. "Your wife is in the hospital?" she asked quietly. "And you're staying here?" Bradford turned to Olivia, who shrugged. "It's your choice," she purred, "but we do need to finish the procedure we planned." Her eyes sparkled with anticipation, a certain coldness that made the nurse's stomach churn. Bradford gripped the phone, hearing Ariana's pleas in the background. On impulse, he hung up. "Doctor," Harper inhaled sharply. "I need a word with you in private," she demanded, directing him to her office. Inside, she shut the door. "Bradford, I don't know what's going on between you, your mistress, and your wife, but this is a line even I won't cross. Your wife is pregnant and possibly in danger. You should be with her." Bradford rubbed his temples, torn. "I've invested so much in Olivia's arrangement," he said, referencing a cosmetic procedure or other hush-hush service the clinic offered. "If I back out now, I lose face. I lose everything with her." Dr. Harper's eyes flashed with disbelief. "You'll lose more if you don't go to your wife. Don't say I didn't warn you." Back at Massachusetts General, Cecilia's pains persisted. Nurses whispered among themselves, "Is her husband coming?" Ariana paced the hallway, trying to keep up morale but losing faith with each passing hour. Dr. Grant recommended close monitoring, explaining that if Cecilia's contractions didn't subside, they might consider preterm labor management or an emergency C-section. The baby's vitals were steady, yet the situation was precarious. Cecilia drifted in and out of rest, her mind heavy with worry. When she was lucid, Ariana dabbed her forehead with a cold cloth and repeated reassuring words. She couldn't hide her frustration, though. Bradford's absence infuriated her. "How can he do this to you?" Ariana muttered under her breath. At one point, a hospital administrator approached to confirm insurance details and emergency contacts. Cecilia swallowed the sting of embarrassment when asked if her spouse would be arriving. She simply shook her head, tears of exhaustion slipping down her cheeks. She recalled the vow they made on their wedding day, in sickness and in health. The vow rang hollow now. She felt an urgent need to make sense of Bradford's betrayal. Had she been naive to think love would transcend the lure of wealth, vanity, and extramarital temptations? A nurse gently escorted Ariana out so Cecilia could rest. Alone, she stared at the stark ceiling, hearing the beep of the fetal monitor. She placed a trembling hand over her belly, whispering, "I'm here for you. I'm so sorry." After Dr. Harper's stern lecture, Bradford paced the corridor of the private clinic, torn between two worlds. Olivia was waiting impatiently, flipping through a magazine. The tension was thick enough to slice with a scalpel. He kept glancing at his phone, which blinked with missed calls from Ariana and even from Winston, the loyal driver who'd heard about Cecilia's condition. Eventually, an unstoppable wave of guilt bulldozed Bradford's pride. Abruptly, he told Olivia, "I have to go." She tried to protest, but he silenced her with a stern glare. "My wife is in the hospital," he said, voice raw with something akin to shame. "Whatever we started here can wait." He tore off a hospital wristband that listed him as a private pay patient, dropping it on a nearby table. Storming out, he ignored Olivia's calls, sprinting to his car. His mind reeled. He had prepared lines of excuses for so long, but now, faced with Cecilia's critical situation, the illusions were crumbling. How had he become so callous? Speeding through city streets, he wrestled with memories of his wedding day, the dreamlike moment he first felt their baby kick, and the pure love Cecilia had always shown him. Fear of losing everything, money, social standing, or a fleeting thrill had driven him into a monstrous role. The car's engine roared, urging him to face the consequences. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Dr. Grant decided to attempt halting Cecilia's premature labor with medication, hoping to buy time for the baby to develop. Ariana was allowed back into the room. She held Cecilia's hand as the mother-to-be breathed through pain, each contraction a reminder of how fragile life could be. Bradford reached Massachusetts General in record time, parking haphazardly before dashing into the lobby. The glaring lights and antiseptic smells assaulted him as he rushed to the reception desk. "Cecilia Whitmore," he gasped. "Where is she?" A frosty-eyed nurse directed him to the maternity wing. As he strode through the corridors, heads turned, whispers of recognition. This was Bradford Whitmore, the millionaire who donated to the hospital in the past, but never bothered to show up for his wife's crisis. Until now. He spotted Ariana near a vending machine, her arms folded, eyes bloodshot from worry. Anger radiated from her posture. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "Don't you dare come near her right now," she hissed, stepping forward. "She's been in agony for hours, and you were off, wherever, with whomever. You're a disgrace, Bradford." Normally, he would have silenced such an insult with intimidation, but guilt paralyzed him. "I had a situation," he began, voice trembling. Ariana shook her head in disgust. "Save it. She could lose this baby. Get in there and pray that your wife forgives you." Without another word, she marched past him. He collected himself, inhaling sharply before pushing open the door to Cecilia's room. Cecilia lay on the hospital bed, her face pale, dark circles under her eyes, and the fourth drip and monitors beeped in staccato rhythms. Upon hearing the door, she glanced up and froze at the sight of Bradford. He stepped closer, every stride weighted with guilt. "Cecilia," he said softly, voice cracking, "I'm sorry I'm late." Her gaze was heavy with pain, physical and emotional. She said nothing at first, simply turning her head away. A tear slid down her cheek. Finally, she managed, "Where were you?" Her voice was hoarse, the heartbreak evident. Bradford fumbled for words. There was a meeting. A misunderstanding. I only just got the message you were here." She squeezed her eyes shut, a fresh wave of contractions making her wince. "You could have been here," she whispered. "We needed you." A tear glistened on her lashes. He placed a trembling hand over hers. She didn't resist, but neither did she reciprocate. "I'm here now," he murmured, guilt welling in his chest like a poison. He caught the baby monitor's steady beep and felt a surge of terror at the thought of losing the child. "I'll do whatever it takes." A nurse entered, adjusting settings on the machine. She eyed Bradford, but said nothing. Leaving them in silence, the nurse stepped out, giving them privacy. The quiet weighed heavily until Cecilia broke it with a hushed plea. "If "If anything happens," she said, voice quivering, "promise me you'll protect our baby." He nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I promise," he whispered, though uncertain if she believed him. "Doctor." Grant returned, checking the monitors. He informed them that Cecilia's labor might be stopped with medication, but it was too soon to be certain. There was a risk to mother and child if her contractions intensified further. He asked Bradford to step outside to discuss the specifics of potential interventions. In the hallway, Bradford pressed the doctor for details. "Is the baby going to be okay?" he asked, voice trembling. Dr. Grant's tone was calm yet grave. "We're doing our best. Cecilia's stress levels are dangerously high. I'm not sure what's happening between you two, but if we can't stabilize her soon, we might have to deliver the baby early." Bradford nearly buckled at the knees. A swirl of regret coursed through him, replaying every moment of neglect. He whispered, "I'm sorry." The doctor's eyes reflected quiet judgment. "Make it right," he said, then walked away. Returning to the room, Bradford found Cecilia quietly sobbing. He took a seat at her bedside. The tension was unbearable. Finally, he confessed, voice raw with anguish, "I've done terrible things." She shut her eyes. "I know," she whispered. He nodded, a part of him relieved that the deception was out in the open. "I got caught up in illusions, an affair." The words tumbled out, each syllable a knife in Cecilia's heart. "I never wanted it to come to this." Her tears were unstoppable now, but she steadied herself. "How long?" she choked out. "Several months," he admitted, staring at the tiles, "with someone named Olivia Blackwood. We met at a fundraiser. Then I let it escalate." Cecilia turned her face away, each breath hurting, as though she were inhaling shards of glass. The baby's heartbeat beeped on the monitor, a reminder of what was at stake. I can't do this anymore." Bradford wanted to reach for her hand, to say something that would mend the gulf, but words felt woefully insufficient. Outside the window, dusk fell, painting the skyline in bruised shades of purple and grey, like the battered trust between them. Night settled over the hospital, neon lights buzzing in the corridors. Nurses tended to Cecilia, adjusting her the fourth medication to calm contractions. Bradford dozed fitfully in a chair, haunted by nightmares of losing both wife and baby. Ariana had left earlier to fetch some comfort items for Cecilia, but not without a final, scathing glare at Bradford. Around midnight, the medication seemed to take effect. Cecilia's contractions waned, providing temporary relief. Dr. Grant suggested she stay overnight for observation. If her condition stabilizes, the baby might stay in for a while longer, he explained. But we need her stress levels down. Bradford leaned over Cecilia's bedside, voice trembling with remorse. "I know apologies aren't enough," he murmured, "but I'm begging you, let me fix this. Let me be here for you and for the baby." Cecilia's eyes fluttered open. She stared at the ceiling, silent tears tracing down her temples. Eventually she spoke. "You betrayed me, Bradford. You betrayed our child." Her words sliced through him like jagged glass. He nodded, throat tight. "I know," he whispered. "Let me try to earn back your trust." She turned her head, meeting his gaze for the first time in hours. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, her voice unwavering. "But the baby deserves a father. Start there. Earn the right to be a parent." Her breathing hitched, and she pressed a hand to her stomach, as if to shield the life inside from further pain. Bradford nodded, tears welling up. "I will," he promised, not fully aware of the steep road ahead. Just when the tension between Bradford and Cecilia reached a fragile ceasefire, the door to the hospital room swung open unexpectedly. There stood Olivia Blackwood, wearing an expensive trench coat, a brazen expression on her face. She cast a haughty glance around the room, ignoring the shock in Bradford's eyes. Cecilia tensed, gripping the bedsheets. She recognized Olivia from a tabloid snippet. Ariana had once shown her an infamous socialite rumored to chase wealthy men. To see her here felt like a final straw. Bradford's face drained of color. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, stepping toward Olivia to block her from approaching the bed. She smirked, flipping her hair. "I heard about the hospital drama. I thought you might need some support, Brad." Her eyes flickered dismissively over Cecilia. Cecilia inhaled sharply, her heartbeat rattling in her chest. The audacity of this woman to invade such a personal, vulnerable moment stoked a fury she'd never felt. Summoning her dwindling strength, she spoke, her voice trembling with anger. "Get out." Olivia arched an eyebrow. "And who are you to tell me that? I'm part of his life now, darling." She placed a hand on her hip, a diamond bracelet catching the fluorescent light. Before Cecilia could respond, Bradford unexpectedly spun on Olivia. "How dare you come here?" he hissed, voice laced with contempt. "My wife nearly lost our baby. Don't you understand you're not wanted?" Olivia seemed taken aback, but quickly sneered. "I see how it is," she scoffed, stepping back. "You'll come crawling back when she bores you again." Cecilia's eyes brimmed with tears, but they were tears of fierce resolve. She managed to lift her head, meeting Olivia's gaze with a steely glare. "You have no idea what love and commitment truly are," she said, voice taut. "Leave now." For a moment Olivia seemed uncertain, her confidence shaken. Then she spun around and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The aftermath left a suffocating silence in the room. Bradford stood there, breathing hard, eyes moist. He turned to Cecilia, whispering, "I'm so sorry. She shouldn't have come here. The damage was done, though." Their precarious peace shattered, replaced by a raw, resentful awareness that everything might be beyond repair. After Olivia's disruptive appearance, a trembling rage built in Cecilia's chest. Her contractions spiked briefly, causing Dr. Grant to rush in with additional medication. Bradford hovered at the edge of the bed, uncertain whether his presence was helping or hurting. A middle-aged nurse named Rosalie took charge, guiding Bradford out of the room. She'd been on shift for hours, silently observing the trauma inflicted on Cecilia by her absentee spouse and the brazen mistress. As the door closed behind them, Rosalie fixed Bradford with a level stare. "You need to give her space." He rubbed his temples, exhaustion etched into every feature. "I need to be here for her, for the baby." Rosalie's gaze softened slightly. "Then be here in a way that doesn't raise her blood pressure. Right now, your wife is an emotional wreck. Every time she looks at you, she's reminded of the betrayal. Let her breathe." Bradford nodded, stepping away from the door. He slumped into a chair in the hallway, head in his hands. Guilt gnawed at him. He pictured Olivia's triumphant smirk and winced. How had he allowed himself to sink so low, to trample on the trust of a woman who once believed in him with all her heart? Inside the room, Rosalie returned to Cecilia's side. She offered a gentle smile, adjusting the thought drip. "Sweetheart, you need rest. Your body's working hard." Cecilia forced a tight smile, tears glistening. "Thank you," she whispered. She laid her head back, focusing on her breathing, determined to ride out each contraction without letting sorrow and anger overwhelm her. While Bradford sat in the hallway, Ariana returned, carrying a small bag of essentials for Cecilia. She stopped upon seeing him, her expression a mixture of anger and concern. "You're still here?" she asked bluntly. He swallowed, nodding. "I won't leave her, not again." Ariana dropped the bag at her feet, crossing her arms. "I used to admire you," she said coldly. "You seemed so devoted. But after what you've done, you deserve every consequence coming your way." Bradford's shoulders slumped. "I know." Then, as if summoned by cosmic justice, his phone vibrated. The screen lit with a call from his attorney. Feeling a jolt of apprehension, Bradford answered. The conversation that followed was bleak. He listened, occasionally pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. "What do you mean, The deal fell through. He hissed into the phone. That was worth millions. Find a way, he paused, eyes widening as the attorney spoke in hushed tones about a massive lawsuit and possible regulatory fines. The call ended with a dire warning. Your finances could be at serious risk. He stared at the blank phone screen, adrenaline pumping. For months, he had balanced precarious deals and hush-hush financial gymnastics, certain he'd come out on top. Now it seemed the foundation was crumbling. He'd set so many fires that one had finally grown out of control. Karma, it seemed, had come knocking. Ariana overheard enough snippets to guess at his predicament. She raised an eyebrow. Business woes? Bradford swallowed, nodding. It's complicated. Nothing is more complicated than lying to your pregnant wife, Ariana muttered, collecting the bag and walking away, leaving him alone with the twin storms of personal and financial disaster swirling around him. Hour by hour, Cecilia stabilized. Dr. Grant confirmed that the medication successfully reduced her contractions to a more manageable level. The baby's heartbeat remained steady. Relief washed over the medical team, though they insisted on continued bed rest and monitoring. Night deepened. Through the window, city lights shimmered over the skyline, but inside her dim hospital room, Cecilia wrestled with the gravity of her marriage's collapse. She recalled the early days, Bradford's gallant gestures, the sweet nothings whispered before bedtime, their shared dreams. Had it all been an illusion? Eventually, she drifted off into a restless slumber, lulled by the beeping monitors. In the corridor, Bradford still paced, haunted by regret. He replayed his vow on their wedding day to stand by her in joy and in sorrow. He had broken that vow spectacularly. The whir of the hospital's fluorescent lights seemed to echo Olivia's biting words, the attorney's dire warnings, and Ariana's scorn. All the while, the flicker of a LED overhead cast a faint halo on the linoleum floor, a reminder of how fleeting illusions can be. He gazed at the door to Cecilia's room, wanting to slip in and apologize again, to hold her hand while she slept. But he remembered Rosalie's warning, give her space. So he found a corner of the hallway, slumped against the wall, and let exhaustion pull him into a fitful doze. In the quiet hush of that hospital wing, as the city churned outside, two souls remained at an impasse. Cecilia, bracing for a future as a mother, perhaps without her husband's love, and Bradford, grappling with a life in free-fall money, reputation, and the woman he betrayed, all at risk of slipping through his fingertips. Dawn broke with soft rays piercing through hospital blinds. A nurse checked Cecilia's vitals, smiling at the stable readings. "Looks like you and the baby had a calmer night," she said gently, adjusting the fourth. Cecilia nodded, her eyes drifting to the empty chair beside her bed. Bradford was nowhere in sight, though she suspected he was somewhere in the hospital. A part of her was relieved not to face him yet. Soon Ariana arrived with fresh clothes and breakfast from a nearby cafe. She kissed Cecilia's forehead, relief evident in her eyes. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Cecilia said softly. "Still tired, still hurting." Ariana squeezed her hand. Bradford stayed all night in the hallway, she revealed, her voice tinged with reluctant compassion. "I found him asleep on the floor. Should I let him in?" Cecilia's brow furrowed. Anger clashed with empathy. "I don't want to see him right now. But let him know I appreciate his concern. That doesn't mean I forgive him." Ariana nodded, stepping out to deliver the message. She found Bradford near a vending machine, disheveled, tie undone, eyes filled with guilt. "She's stable," Ariana said. "She still needs space, but she acknowledges you're here. That's something." Bradford swallowed the lump in his throat. "Thank you," he murmured, relief mingling with the ache of remorse. "I'll stay as long as it takes." While Ariana and Bradford spoke, a hospital social worker approached, inquiring about Cecilia's support system. Word had spread about a wealthy husband's affair, the pregnant wife's near emergency, and the mistress's brazen intrusion. Hospital staff, used to drama, still felt dismay at the callousness displayed. But they rallied around Cecilia, ensuring she had the best care possible. Outside, early morning traffic rumbled, the city forging ahead as if nothing monumental had happened. Yet for Cecilia, everything had changed. As the day wore on, Bradford's phone erupted with notifications. The business crisis he'd tried to ignore now demanded his full attention. Lawyers needed signatures, accountants demanded urgent clarifications. A hostile takeover rumor swirled around one of his companies. It seemed every gamble he'd taken in the past year was backfiring at once. He stepped outside the maternity wing to handle phone calls in a quieter corridor. Each conversation chipped away at the confidence he once wore like armor. His voice trembled as he negotiated with attorneys and bankers, attempting to stave off disaster. He dreaded telling Cecilia the extent of their financial jeopardy. Once, he'd boasted that even if he lost a deal, their lives would remain lavish. Now, multiple deals were collapsing like dominoes. Meanwhile, in her hospital bed, Cecilia faced a different reality. She engaged with Dr. Grant about her condition, discussing postpartum arrangements if the baby arrived early. The conversation shifted to potential changes in her personal life, and Dr. Grant delicately asked if she had a stable home environment. She hesitated, tears brimming. "I don't know. I might have to figure this out on my own." Bradford eventually returned, shoulders sagging. He quietly approached her bed. She glanced at him, noticing the strain etched into his features. He looked like a man who'd lost everything but was too proud to admit it. In a soft voice, she asked, "Is something wrong with your business?" He exhaled shakily. "Yes," he confessed. "I might lose several major investments. I wanted to spare you the stress, but, well..." Cecilia looked away, torn between bitterness and sorrow. Part of her felt a strange satisfaction, karmic retribution for his affair. But she also remembered the man. She loved the man who once opened his heart to her, who taught her to dream bigger than her small-town origins. "Take care of your affairs," she finally said, voice weary. "But don't expect me to hold you up this time. I need all my strength for myself and this baby." Days passed, and Cecilia remained in the hospital for monitoring. Her contractions had subsided, though occasional waves of pain reminded everyone how precarious her condition still was. Bradford oscillated between emergency business meetings often conducted over the phone or via anxious text messages in the hospital corridor and subdued vigil by her bedside. He brought small gestures, fresh flowers, an air purifier to make the room more comfortable, a hamper of soft blankets. She accepted them with polite distance. Ariana noticed that the tension between them had cooled from fiery anger to a heavy, exhausted silence, perhaps a necessary lull for healing or deeper confrontation. In a moment of relative calm, Dr. Grant approached with tentative good news. "If your vitals remain stable, we may allow you to return home under strict bed rest." Relief flickered in Cecilia's eyes, though she worried about going back to the penthouse. "Home," she repeated quietly, uncertain if it was truly a haven or a place of painful memories. That afternoon, Ariana helped her take a slow walk down the hospital hallway, supporting her elbow. The short walk left Cecilia breathless, but it felt liberating to be out of bed. Bradford remained a few steps behind, ready to catch her if she stumbled. Despite everything, a glimmer of the old protective warmth still radiated from him. Back in the room, he awkwardly cleared his throat. "I've arranged for a private nurse to assist you at home," he said, a faint tremor in his voice. "Only if you want it." Cecilia locked eyes with him, studying the humility in his gaze. "Thank you," she replied softly. "I appreciate the help for the baby's sake." It wasn't forgiveness, nor was it an invitation to reclaim what they once had. But in that hospital room, overshadowed by heartbreak, a tiny seed of civility was planted, one that might grow, if nurtured with honesty and genuine remorse. The night before Cecilia's discharge, a final bombshell dropped. Olivia Blackwood posted a scandalous snapshot on social media, a photo of her with Bradford at a glamorous event weeks prior, captioned with a cryptic message alluding to unbreakable bonds. The tabloids latched onto it, spewing sensational headlines: Bradford Whitmore caught between pregnant wife and showstopper mistress. The story spread like wildfire, even among hospital staff. Ariana discovered it first. Fuming, she confronted Bradford, showing him the post. "What are you going to do about this?" she demanded, shaking the phone in his face. Bradford's expression darkened. "I'll handle it," he muttered, stepping away to call Olivia. When she answered, her tone dripped with sarcasm. "Brad, darling, didn't expect you to ring so soon. How's wifey?" He clenched his jaw. "Olivia, take down that post. Now, you've done enough damage." She laughed, a cruel sound. "Why should I? The world deserves to know the truth. Besides, you seemed quite happy with me not long ago." He forced himself to remain calm. "Look, you've had your fun, but if you keep this up, I'll release evidence of your little side deals. The hush money you demanded. You'll lose credibility and maybe face charges." A tense silence. Then Olivia hissed, "Fine. But don't think this is over. You owe me, Brad. Don't forget it." She ended the call abruptly. True to her word, the post disappeared within minutes. But the damage was done. Rumors swirled. The hospital staff couldn't help but pity Cecilia, who seemed trapped in a humiliating public drama. Ariana filled her in carefully. But Cecilia only closed her eyes, tears leaking out. She was too drained to feed the scandal. She just wanted to bring her baby safely into the world. As for Bradford, each new revelation hammered home the cost of his affair. He felt his dignity disintegrating under the relentless media gaze and the quiet condemnation of hospital workers who once admired his philanthropy. Now, they viewed him as a cautionary tale, a man who risked everything for a fleeting thrill. With her condition stabilized, Cecilia was discharged under strict orders of bed rest and minimal stress. Ariana helped pack her belongings while a private nurse, arranged by Bradford, readied for in-home care. There was no grand fanfare, just a subdued departure from Massachusetts General, a place that had witnessed the darkest hours of her marriage. Bradford escorted her to a waiting car, holding the door open. She eased herself inside, leaning against the seat with a sigh of relief. The drive to their penthouse was eerily silent, except for the hum of traffic. Upon arrival, house staff scrambled to greet them, offering subdued bows and cautious smiles. The penthouse felt different, tainted by betrayal. Cecilia noticed that Bradford had removed certain items, pictures of them traveling, mementos that might trigger painful memories. She couldn't decide if she found that comforting or sad. It was as though he were preparing for a new chapter, uncertain if she'd still be in it. As the days passed, Cecilia remained mostly confined to bed. Nurses checked her vitals. Ariana visited often, bringing books and updates from the outside world. Bradford hovered, offering help. Though she accepted, she maintained emotional distance. She'd seen him spurn an entire empire for a mistress. Trusting him again would require far more than flowers and apologies. Meanwhile, Bradford's business empire continued to unravel. Lawsuits, negative press, and cancelled deals chipped away at his fortune. The once mighty millionaire faced an avalanche of debt and legal scrutiny. He attended meetings in the living room, red-eyed and desperate, speaking in hushed tones to attorneys. Whenever he returned to Cecilia's side, his face was etched with torment, clearly a man under siege from both moral guilt and financial ruin. Through it all, the baby's heartbeat thrived, a testament to resilience in the face of adversity. In quiet moments, Cecilia placed her hand over her belly, feeling tiny kicks and promising the child love. protection and a stable future, even if that meant forging one on her own. Eventually, the final straw arrived. Bradford was forced to file for bankruptcy protection on one of his major holdings. News outlets devoured the story, relishing the downfall of a man once touted as unstoppable. For many, it was poetic justice, a karmic price for the heartache he caused. Even as Bradford's empire crumbled, life found a way to bloom. Cecilia's baby arrived weeks later, healthy and strong, proving that hope can triumph over betrayal and despair. Bradford, stripped of his wealth and riddled with regret, found himself rebuilding from the ashes. More importantly, he found his true test, supporting the woman he had wounded in her greatest time of need. Cecilia, no longer the wide-eyed small-town girl, emerged with a new sense of purpose. Parenthood became her anchor. She moved carefully toward co-parenting with Bradford, holding fast to her dignity and her child's well-being above all else. Painful though their journey had been, each discovered that the true measure of wealth lies in humility, empathy, and unwavering love for family. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales of resilience. Your support means everything. Thank you for watching.